Good morning and welcome to Corvacon 2024. This year we're taking inspiration from the World Fair as our theme. I want to talk about two interesting instances in the past. In 1876 in Philadelphia, Alexander Graham Bell introduced the telephone. And when people saw this, they couldn't understand what was the use. This was crazy. Why would I want to talk at distances to people? Another time in 1982 in Knoxville, they introduced the touchscreen, which at first was clunky, it was slow, it was hard to use. Again, people couldn't see, why would I use this instead of a keyboard? But in both cases, engineers saw the early potential of these devices and they kept going and they kept developing them to what it is today, and we all have a phone in our pocket. So 10 years ago, Corva started with a mission, actually, of a software automated rig. And it sounded like a complete stretch. I remember I would email all these engineers, these experts in the industry. I was brand new to everything. And I was like, hey, can we build this? Can we do it? Is it possible? Will it save on cost? You name it. But I really didn't get any responses back. I think people just thought I was crazy. And at some point I started to wonder, maybe the skeptics were right. Maybe this is not possible. And so 10 years later, we finally brought this vision to life. So what the television and touchscreen did later, if we just keep at it, these things can actually happen. But you wouldn't have thought so back in the early days. No one trusted the data. We couldn't get it even streaming in. And ML, machine learning, and AI, that was in its infancy. That was not happening at all. I remember this engineer, his name was Jeff, and he would call us every week and he would basically say, look, when I log in at 6 a.m., this dashboard, these numbers on it, they must be exactly right. They must be perfect. If they're not, I can't trust the system and I can't use it. And that was so frustrating because we would work so hard. And we're just waking up in the morning and there's the numbers and they're not right. And this would happen and it happened and he kept calling us. It was a super frustrating process, but this was like the kick that we needed to say, you gotta make it perfect. Another example is like we would go to the field and in the early days, all of our apps, they needed trajectory survey information to work, or a lot of them. And we would train one of the field engineers and we'd say, here's how you do it. You put it in the WITSML log to do that in real time. But the problem is that night when the relief came on, they would forget. Or that next week when they went off shift, they would forget. And so it's like this constant theme of like trying to fix the process, but if it's not there, if it doesn't work, our software didn't work. And then not to mention machine learning back in the days, everything was about data, and so if the data wasn't right, the machine learning models didn't work, and if they didn't predict, no one trusted them. And so, that's been going on for a while. At one point, we had a project to try to predict bitware, but then we realized later on after some work, it's like, well, we only have 1 bit record, so that's not enough data. So it's like these early tribulations of like, what can we do? But it's just not there. But it's just not the technology. These were people and process problems as well. As Corva actually shifted to having better data, we had dedicated huge operations teams. We had better programs. Now we were faced with a different problem. We had complete and total paralysis of data. We had too much data. We were overloaded with it. And so we have over 200 apps. And now it's the question of like, which app do I use? I can't find it when I need it. And so everything now shifted to a mode of just tell me what I need to know or do it for me. It's not good enough just to give me all these data and dashboards because that doesn't help me. So, people would even come to us still and say, hey, can you build this app? And we'd say, well, we already have it here. You just have to search the App Store, but that was quite a stretch. So there is now this shift to empower engineers, and we had to guide them through the complexity. And after a while, we actually did have, in predictive drilling, we had an advisory mode where we could actually send parameters to the rig and tell them, here's what you should do. The problem is no one would actually take the data and use it. And I get it. For 10 years, there's been systems that have said, here's how we can do, software-based automation, and none of them really worked. And so why would anyone, give it a chance? And so we kind of hit a brick wall. And we kept talking about this, and we're telling people, look, we think this is pretty good. We just can't get people to use it. We can't put it in. And we started having conversations with the folks at Neighbors, and over time, we're like, this is the deal. This is the problem. And at one point, they just said, well, let's give it a shot. And literally, I think like a week later, we had an API connected to our software, to the rig, and we were actually sending set points, new predictions, new drilling parameters to that rig every 15 seconds. And that was the magic moment. It clicked. So here's our vision of the future. We're trying to connect the entire ecosystem. We started very small in drilling, but that's just the beginning. It's like really what we're trying to look at are all the sides of one piece, which is like the reservoir. We want to look at drilling. We want to integrate geo, completions, and production. No longer are we trying to exist in a silo, because when you bring all the data together, that's when you get real insight. That's when things actually become smart. If I had a tight spot in drilling, that's going to inform what's going on when I'm doing completions and also in my production system. So all these things are super critical. I mean, what if you're fracking stages, but all your production's only coming from a few stages? That's pretty interesting information, right? So we have to merge this together and create predictive intelligence across the whole life cycle. And that's essentially our mission. That's what we're trying to do. And every step is important. And every engineer that's believing in that is taking this forward. So in completions, we're doing a lot of work there. We're trying to bring in predictive frac. Jessica is going to be speaking about that a little bit later. And in production also, that's a huge part. It's new for us. But Amir is going to be telling about some of the things we're doing there. And so it's no longer good enough to have tools and analytics and dashboards in a vacuum. We have to bring all this together for harmony. The idea is the lowest resource extraction cost by maximizing the reservoir, right? I mean, that's what we're all here for. So we have to bring it together. But trust is fragile. It has to be earned every day. We have new basins. We still actually do have new discoveries. We have new conditions. We have equipment changes. All these variables, the people are changing all the time. We're trying to ingest more data types. And one mistake in the numbers can rewind the clock by 10 years and people will not trust it again. So we have to really invest in this continuously and all the time. And Augustine's going to be up here in a bit to talk about some of that stuff. So engineers, this is the defining moment, a chance to pioneer just as the telephone and the touchscreen did once upon a time. This concept might seem far out there, but we need to make it a part of everyday operations. So I want to invite you to partner with us and explore and push the boundaries. And welcome to Corvacon. This is going to be a great day, and we're going to shape the future together. So the future is actually here. Let's make it a reality.
Good morning, everybody. Before I get started, a few things I want to say. First of all, I want to thank you, the customers, the partners, for coming here today. The event keeps getting bigger every year, and it's a good sign of a commitment from us to you and also from you to us. But one group I would like to thank is all the people who traveled internationally to come here. So can you please have a raise of hands for those people who have traveled from any part of the outside the US? There's more than that. Come on. Thank you very much. And the second group really is the group within Corva. I can't having been here for the last few weeks, last few years, the amount of energy and effort that goes into putting this event together is unbelievable. And the creative team at Corva, led by Jamie, can you please raise your hand? And all the creative team, please raise your hands. Thank you all of you for hosting this together. So the topic really is AI. But I want to spend a few minutes telling you how Corva thinks about AI. And the story is as follows. On a personal level, how many of you probably used Google Maps to come here today? Or many of you used Google Maps in the last week or some other capability? Do we use Google Maps? Yes, big as hands. Do you use Google Maps because it has AI in it? No, you don't. Why do you use it? Because it works. It works reliably, efficiently, every single day, every single time you want to use it. AI is not about AI. AI is about really solving problems that people want solved every day. You as customers don't care about AI. You as customers want us to build products that help you solve some really hard problems. Predictive drilling is an example, and we'll talk about that multiple times during the day. But the notion of an automated rig drilling every well in a semi-autonomous manner every single day is a transformative concept. That's the power of what you want us Corvas to work on. So when you think about us and Corva and AI, that's a good example. A second example of how we think about AI and what we are trying to do is something that happened in my family room a couple of weeks ago. And my college daughter comes to me one day and says, "Hey Dad, what's the difference between machine learning, deep learning, LLMs? When do I use them? How do I use them? What's the story?" And I said, her name is Shreya. I said, "Shreya, you got two choices. I can get you a large number of books and you can go through it in detail and get to the bottom of what all this stuff means, or I can give you a 1-minute answer. What do you want?" And she said, "I just want the 1-minute answer today, and then depending upon my interest, I'll go do more work." I said, "Great." I open up my phone, open up ChatGPT, type the prompt, and it spits out an answer on what the differences are. So complicated concepts of different types of AI and everything else took me literally 5 seconds to find the differences, go to ChatGPT, and that's really what we are looking for. We're looking for things that solve a business problem, give us more time to be more productive, so we can focus on the things that really matter. So as you think about AI and Corva, I want you to remember those two examples. That's the bar. That's what we are setting ourselves up for, is that's what we can deliver to you in terms of productivity, both at a personal level or on a well construction level. That's a commitment to you. And last year at Corvacon, I stood up here and I said, we are going to be building transformative technologies in the space of well construction. And so today marks the 1-year journey. Actually, the journey has been far longer than that. But what we're going to tell you today is, from an AI perspective, what that journey has looked like for the last 12 months and where we are today. And in order to do that, I'm going to bring 3 people to the stage, and they're going to give you a 2-minute perspective on where we are today, and then we'll actually open it up for QA. So the first speaker is William Fox, and he's going to tell you about what we are doing with AI and predictive drilling.
Thank you, Dharmesh. So when I stood up here a year ago, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, to tell you about predictive drilling, we drilled 3 hole pads. In the intervening 12 months, we've drilled around 750,000 feet with AI and control on 130 different wells in 5 basins. It's been a roller coaster. We've got some candid feedback. I have only been on the receiving end of being cussed out by company men, but we only got run off 1 rig. But if you don't get run off, is it really disruptive enough, right? But as a result of that feedback, I checked, and we've made 72 enhancements to predictive drilling in the last 53 weeks. The result of that is that if we can now get a rig team, the company and the office, to agree to run predictive drilling on a rig, almost always we're going to get 80 to 90% utilization on that section, on that well, And what we're seeing statistically across the entire sample is that we see about a 13 to 15% on-bottom ROP improvement in the intermediate. We see about a 17 to 20% improvement in the lateral, and crucially, about a 30% reduction in trips. And so that's a material improvement, and it's repeatable, it's predictable, it's run by the software. It doesn't matter who's on tower, doesn't matter which hitch it is. But we realized you don't have to just take my word for it. We've developed a set of tools now where we can actually run any of your historical wells or any of your current wells with a certain set of assumptions, run predictive drilling, give a report out, say how much smoother and faster could this well have been drilled. So if you want to talk about that, come find me at the booth after this. But none of this would have been possible without you, the operator customers, and our partner neighbors to spend 12 months beating the heck out of this thing and turning it into something that is now almost as it just works as the Google Maps example that Dharmesh gave. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Jessica Iriarte, who's going to talk about what we're doing in completions.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, William. Corva has transformed the way we monitor our operations. Since Corva Completions was launched in 2020, our customers have increased their efficiencies by 25%. And that has been our main focus. But now, our vision is to bring predictive intelligence to completions, just like we did with drilling. We want to aim for consistency and capital efficiency, where every stage is pumped or fractured at its most optimal execution. Picture it. Your fracturing is a highly automated operation with your fleet safety limits and your horsepower threshold set, where you're automatically executing your design and controlling every component of your fleet, your pumps, your blenders, your chemicals, under your supervision. When you're adjusting to the changing conditions with real-time predictive alerts for raising pressures or dropping chemicals, this is where we're heading, and we have already started. Look, the biggest challenge that we keep hearing from our customers, from our operators in completions, is the lack of consistency and the lack of predictability that we have in our completions operations. We have a plan, but it's really hard to stick to it because of all of these trouble stages or trouble behavior that arises that deviates from your design. So we've been looking into very granular data sets for drilling, completions, and geology to try to understand what's driving this. And now we're developing predictive models that will anticipate these issues before completing the well. So then you can make your decisions and change your design or your plan as needed. Our first model, the stage categorization, it's already identifying issues like screen-outs or mid-stage shutdowns post-stage, and understanding whether that was driven by a subsurface behavior or a surface-driven issue. And this is just the beginning. Next, we want to build predictive pressure models and predictive events and find the best mitigation strategies for these issues, just like we've done for predictive drilling. Perhaps next, we'll be working together in one of these models. And now I'll introduce Amir Salehi, that we're talking about production.
Great. We already talked about a lot of fit-for-purpose AI and ML applications at Corva. I think William covered all the ML applications for predictive drilling, how we are trying to drill faster wells, safer wells, reducing all the risks. And then Jessica covered most of the AI ML applications for completions, building a predictive pressure model, identify and predict trouble stages, try to avoid them, all the mitigation strategies we need to take to avoid trouble stages, optimizing fluid and proppant volumes, and reducing costs. But at the end of the day, probably the ultimate measure of success for a well construction process is productivity. We are in an era of flat oil prices, and most companies out there, they want to increase their productivity and ultimately optimizing their field development plan. So We started this production journey around 6 months ago by bringing the last missing piece in Corva, which is production. So, as you know, Corva is really great and has been really great in bringing all the completion, drilling, and geoscience metrics into our platform. And what we are doing now, we are bringing in all the critical key production metrics, starting from CUMs, multi-phase flow effects, and estimated ultimate recovery to Corva. FDIs are part of that journey too. So we have two challenges with production data. One is we need to identify the main production drivers for a given well. Is it completion related? Is it drilling related? That's the main challenge. The second one is to build a robust, fast, and reliable predictive model to forecast the production of a well and give us the ultimate recovery of that well. For the first challenge, we brought all these metrics into this platform. We call it integrated metrics platform, drilling, completion, geo, and production. And we give the user the ultimate flexibility to visualize production along with all the other metrics that you have on the platform, including drilling and completion intensity, proppant volume, proppant concentrations, fluid concentration. So with that, the user would get immediate insights, probably not very insightful in the beginning, but as a couple of iterations goes on, a lot of insights into production data. I'm trying to just show one example here, plotting the ultimate recovery of the wells versus cluster spacing. And then immediately by looking at this plot, the user would understand would be the optimal spacing of the well and cluster spacing, trying to avoid underspending and overspending. What's next for us? We need to investigate and explore thousands of scenarios, and we need a fast-forward model. Without having a fast-forward model, it's impossible, because if we rely only on physics-based modeling to forecast the production of a given well, that's gonna take long. So that's why we are working on a very robust hybrid physics-based ML-trained models to forecast production and EOR, and then explore all those thousands of scenarios. We are excited. We just started the production journey, and we want to work with you guys. And I think by the next time we are presenting here at Corvacon next year, I'm sure we have a very robust and value creative product to show you. Thank you.
So while the panel takes the stage, a couple of administrative items. So for a software company that builds a lot of software, what you're going to see today is something slightly different, which is all the software presentations are in the showcase alley. So there is a team of people, all the domain experts, all the product specialists are standing there, and there are two words you need to go say them to get the best of experience and say what's new. Just go to each booth and ask what's new, and you will get a perspective on what they've been working on for the last 12 months and what they're going to work on for the next 12 months. It's our best way of, rather than boring you with presentation after presentation, the methodology today is you actually go and see and spend time on the things that you care about. The second part is, if you're not going to do presentations, what are we going to do? And really, very open moment here is, this is the time for you to ask questions. The team in front of you can handle any AI question you throw at us, or at least we'll do our best. And so I will open the audience up for open it to the audience for asking questions. Any questions? Come on, raise your hands. I have one in the back there.
My question for you on the AI capabilities that we can incorporate into apps is, do we have the ability to bring in some of the bigger foundational models with some of the mechanisms like AWS Bedrock and LangChain on Bedrock? So can we bring in some of these more advanced mechanisms through the Corva infrastructure to have AI-driven apps?
Okay, so the first question has to be the hardest one. You could have asked so many simple questions. The answer is the following. So Jeff, our CTO, is here. He'll talk about it a little bit, but absolutely take it to him. But the Reader's Digest version of it is yes, absolutely. For those who are building apps in Corva, we have a product called Dev Center. It has a concept called Platform API, and LLM support is being embedded into the Platform API. So you can build Dev Center apps and use the Platform API to integrate your LLMs into it. Any other question?
Hari Ramakrishnan with Marathon Oil. This is for William. Hey, William, you talked a little bit about your AI in drilling solutions. Could you maybe give a couple of examples, recent big impact that you've had both in unconventionals here as well as offshore?
Yeah, great question. So on the unconventional side, two quick examples. We did get challenged to drill an intermediate with no roadmap. So folks probably used to having a roadmap for each formation as they're stacked in the intermediate. But with the changes that we've made to the logic for predictive drilling, we had very aggressive customers who said, I want to trust this algorithm to put the maximum amount of weight on bit at all times. And if we're not willing to break the rig, then what are we doing? And so we were able to drill an intermediate with very high tool limits. And the algorithm actually succeeded and adjusted within 15 seconds to every formation top. So we're very excited about that because the roadmap is always wrong. And on the offshore and international side, happy to say that we have our first RSS-only model that we've built. It's actually going to be next month. We will be drilling in Latin America with that. And assuming that goes well, we will be ready to talk to you about offshore predictive drilling models here in the next couple of months.
Next question.
Omer.
I actually have the microphone here. Anna Riquer from Halliburton. This one is for Jessica. Jessica, you mentioned capital efficiencies as part of the goals and objectives that you have. Can you elaborate what do you mean by that? What benefits come for us as customers, please?
Yes, of course. That's a great question. I mean, when we talk about capital efficiency at the end of the day, in the completions point of view, we're thinking like any investment, how much do you want to spend on each stage to make sure that you can yield the returns that you're looking for, right? And I think Amir touched a little bit on underspending versus overspending. And Corva so far in our completions applications are very much focused on operational efficiency. And that, we've seen our customers achieve a lot of savings through that. Usually by maximizing the resources they have or saving time, right? Whether it's like speeding up swap time or speeding up time to rate. But now we're taking it up a notch and we're bringing a new application, Cost Commander, where you actually be able to track costs. So attach a dollar amount to these changes that you're making in real time. So as you're making adjustments on your rate or on your FR or your chemicals or your fluids, then you see how that is affecting your ultimate, dollar value that's attached to an AFE, rather than thinking on perception of changes that you're making and how that's actually costing you.
Next
All right.
question.
My name is Chinedu Emewa from Hayes. In Gulf of Mexico, we drill mostly vertical wells, but we do know the benefit of horizontal wells. Now, part of the reason we do it is because we can't predict what the pressures would be ahead of the bid, right? Because of complexities, maybe turbidite reservoirs, things change very abruptly. I'm wondering if you're working on predicting pore pressures ahead of the bid, maybe several feet, 10, 100 feet ahead of the bid. If we can do this, then we can safely react and we can drill horizontal wells and derive that benefit.
Okay, well, so I don't know the answer to that. However, that guy sitting right in front of you does. So after this, I think you should talk to Mo, but I'll take the safe route on that one.
All right. We'll get back to you. Thanks. Next question.
Hi. My name is Ömer Gürpınar. I am with Integrated Reservoir Optimization. First of all, I'm very happy to see you guys spelled production and recovery in a Corva meeting. And it only took 10 years for you guys to get there. In my previous job, it took 30 years. So with that, my question is to Amir. Amir, you said a lot of correct things, like 90%. Could you please expand on what exactly we are expecting from ML and AI, and because they are two different things. One good thing that I said is, you said hybrid physics models. Just go there, please, for educate us. Thank you.
Thank you, Omer. Great question. Well, I call it great question because I have a slide to explain that. Thank you so much. No, it's always been a dilemma on how we're going to forecast physics-based models or purely data-driven. I've spent the entire of my PhD in probably first 7-8 years of my career working on full fidelity and full physics models. That's going to take probably hours with very high accuracy, but you can explore very limited number of scenarios out there. For optimization purposes that we have in mind, we need to explore thousands of scenarios, even more, with all those feature space that we have. So I think the best way moving forward is to do a hybrid modeling. So pick the best of both worlds, pick the engineered features derived from physics, critical ones, and then feed it to neural network or any type of deep learning architecture there, and then forecast. That's going to be much faster. We can explore hundreds of scenarios. Seb from Hess is here is going to talk about a lot of hybrid techniques to do with production forecasting later on in the day. I believe those type of techniques are optimal for our purposes. We call them PINs, physics-informed neural networks, and I think those would be the optimal modeling techniques for this type of optimization.
Thank you. Any two more questions?
Hi, this is for Jessica. I'm Maite from Oxy. I'm a completion engineer. My question is, do you need an extra box, or how do you get the data for the AI? I guess where I'm going is, we currently use you, we get the data. So we know we put a user box in our frag bands. Can use that, all the information that you have been collecting for years to generate AI for the future wells, or you will need to generate new data?
That's a great question. Are you referring to like Oxy building your own models, or us as Corva building our own models?
You as Corva.
Okay. So we usually partner with customers to build these models, so that way we collaborate on access to the data. But at the end of the day, the data is yours, so we're very respectful of data privacy in that end. And I don't know, Dharmesh, if you want to add anything.
I think
to that.
our philosophy on this is very simple. Every data in Corva belongs to the customer, so we will not use one customer's data for some other customer for generation of AI models. So we do our level best to partner with customers to build models for them. What Amir and his team have done this year, and this is a good example, the first predictive drilling model took us almost 4 years to build, or 3 years to build. But today we are building new models for new customers in 2 weeks. So we built a platform that allows us to accelerate building of models for customers that is fit for their purpose, for that data. We do have a number of customers who have chosen to participate in what I call, hey, we want a generic model. So for those customers who give us rights to the data to build a generic model, we do it. But we also do the other side, which is we build specific models for specific customers.
Gotcha. I guess, can you use the current data that we have, that you already storage for us, to predict future models, or would you need to generate new data?
So, Jessica, you want to take it?
We can talk after if you want.
I think we have a lot of operational data that we could do that with today's data, but operations are always changing. So models have to adapt as new operations are coming to train them with new data sets. So
just to quickly,
one last question and then we have to. In the back. Go ahead. Just 1 second.
Sorry. Hello, my name is Deborah Tiepo. I work from Tenaris. And my question is for Amir mainly. It's related to data quality. We have been talking about, modeling, predictive, and I think data quality is kind of the challenge or the main challenge when you start building models, no? And I have 2 questions for that. The first one is related to hybrid models. When you use, data-driven model plus hybrid models, which weight do you give to the data quality? Would you, I would say, let the machine learning part or the AI part to make a decision on the data quality? And the second question is, we know that sometimes the data we are not generating the data. Data is coming from different sources, and sometimes the quality of the sources are not good enough for us to do something with it. So is there anything that you are doing, working with other data providers, data hubs, to improve the quality of the data that you are using for the models?
Thank you. You want to start on that or?
Yeah, let me take it in the interest of time. So first of all, there's a presentation coming up by Augustine. We have a whole system called Fusion that is centered around data quality and how we ingest data. So it's a core part of the Corva platform. Augustine will cover it, and if you need more questions, the right domain experts are in Showcase Alley, and they will talk to you about how this whole concept of data quality and Fusion works. Augustine has raised his hand, so you can go through more detail. In the interest of time, we're going to stop the panel here because we have a tight schedule. But the whole idea today is, of Corvacon is that feel free to ask anybody any questions anytime. We all will be here for the rest of the day and happy to take them. Just a couple of closing thoughts on this, and then I'll introduce the next panel. And I use the example of Google Maps, and I use the example of ChatGPT for a reason. Not because they work, that's great. But what is actually interesting about them is, guess how much capital was spent to build those applications? Right? 30, 40, 50 billion dollars approximately is the range. I'm probably more understating it. Why do we think we can be successful? And nobody asked that question, and if I were you, I would ask that question. And I will give you three reasons why we think we can be successful. One is the partnerships we have. Whether it's a E&P operator, some of the strategic partners we have been incredibly valuable to us in our journey on making this dream possible. Everything in predictive drilling, everything we are doing in completions would not be possible without the help from our partners. Second is really the amount of data we have. Today, as we speak, we have 170 terabytes of data housed in Corva, and it's growing by about 2 to 5 terabytes a day. It's an incredible place for us to experiment, to work with you collaboratively, to actually build this stuff. Without that kind of data sets, we would not be, those are familiar with the data science world, it would not be possible. And the third, and really is exemplified by Ryan's video in the beginning, or the opening video, is the drive to get it right. It's easy to say, just make it work. The effort required is incredible, and you have a company and a team of people and Corvanauts who have the passion to do it. And I think that's what should give you conviction, that's what gives us conviction that we can be successful on this journey. With that, I'm going to open the next panel. So it's one thing to talk about data, it's another thing to talk about AI, but as we all know, and Ryan said it, it's about connecting everything together. So we've talked about well construction, we talked about drilling, we talked about completion. What's the missing piece? The subsurface, the geology, right? And so about 3 years ago, we started the journey of integrating subsurface data into Corva. Took a lot of steps, built a lot of software, but there was one thing that was missing, and it's still missing today, and guess what that is we could never get the geologists to come use anything in Corva. And there was a reason for that, and the reason for that is we don't have geologists at Corva. So how can we as a software company build software for geologists without having a geologist in Corva. I may have offended somebody in Corva, please bear with me, but it's not a core expertise for us. And so the journey was, as we always do things, just like Neighbors was a partnership to make predictive drilling possible. We formed a partnership with the company. And this was a tricky partnership because we have to find geologists who are willing to basically change the way they do things. And it's not easy in this industry to find people who are willing to change a lot of fundamentally things they do. And we came across a company by the name of Core Geologic, and Dan is the CEO, so Dan will be joining us. And Dan had the same passion as we did. He wanted to basically get every geologist to use some facet of Corva in some day for as part of the day-to-day operation. And so with that, I want to welcome you to Dan, and we'll talk about the journey. Ryan will also join us, and three of us will briefly talk about this whole journey, about bringing what I call is a third group, which is the geo group or the subsurface group, in the integral part of what Corva does every day. Dan and Ryan.
You staying?
Yeah.
I'll go on the other side.
Oh, on the other
We need
side?
to make this
All
a
right.
proper roast.
So before we get started, I'll let Dan introduce himself, his passion, and what he's trying to accomplish.
All right, well, thank you for the introduction, Dharmesh. It's a little intimidating being in a room full of engineers, so give me a break here. But my name's Dan Lowry. I'm the president and CEO of Core Geologic, so I'm an operations development geologist by background. Company's been in business about 8 years. We employ about 85, 90 geologists on a given day. So we run mostly US-based operations, few international projects. We are a full-service geoscience consulting firm, so that's petrophysics, geophysics, exploration services, as well as a very large operational component, which is geosteering, well site geology, operations geology, and development geology.
Thank you. So what was your reason for the partnership? What was your objective?
So I think some of the challenges that we see, a lot of them are on the operational side. So a lot of it has to do with the lack of integration of data, like, coming from operations, trying to, work with engineering. We have a lot of issues around kind of being siloed, so we don't get information correctly out of the engineers or timely. So that tends to affect performance on what we're doing on our side. And then the other issue was just dealing with the large volume data sets and how do we get these data sets into a more digestible format so that we can have more actionable insights. So these are issues we've seen with, single rig companies to, 25 or 30 rig companies. It's the same pervasive issue. The other set of problems that we generally see are just around collaboration and communication. So that was kind of we've been trying to solve this problem internally for, half a decade at this point, but at the end of the day, we're geologists, we don't build software. So we needed a partner to, really lay these problems out and then look at, we wanted an integrated platform. Corva is really the only integrated platform in the market right now. So they were the best fit for us. So we figured if we put, take our geologists and their developers and people like Amir and task them out to solve this problem, that we probably come up with a software solution to it.
So we'll continue talking, but does anybody in the audience have any questions?
Well, I have one. So geologists care about the subsurface. What do the drilling people care about?
Cheaper, better, faster. So how do we help do that? So I think a lot of, my experience, I've, been berated by many engineers in my life for decisions I've made. So how do I address this? I need to get accurate information that is going to be reliable over to an engineer as quickly as possible so that they can execute on that data, right? So as geologists, like what we do, a lot of our work is interpretive. So we need to be very succinct and very concise in how we're conveying things, which I think that goes back to the communication piece. And then the other part of that is a lot of the geoscience data is siloed. So if I can just simply get the same plot in front of a drilling engineer that a geologist is looking at, and we agree that we're looking at the same data, and then if I make a change, they understand why I made that change, then it facilitates that decision-making process so much better.
What do you estimate is like the change in the productivity of that well or the quality of that well? Like what is there an estimate? Like just people talking together versus everyone working in a silo. Like I did an interpretation, maybe you'll look at it, maybe you won't.
Yeah. No, I don't know if I can, productive wise, like I said, like I'm more focused on the drilling side. So how do we get the well drilled faster? And how do we, really, how do we fine tune accuracy and wellbore placement? That's a big issue. And a lot of that is communication and collaboration. That's everybody. So that's our drilling engineers, that's the directional guys, that's the field soups, that's the entire team. So,
how many people in completions are looking at the geology and using that to inform what they're doing?
Yeah, so that's one thing that we're working on in Corva is, basically being able to take the geosteering cross sections, plot all of the completions, like, pre-completions plans, so all of our stages, perfs, all of those intervals on there, and then we can, break down basically a lithosphase model as far as where the wells are drilled, and then get that data conveyed over to completions as quickly as possible, right? So they actually have a, kind of rock-based guide to complete the well, so maybe they want to fine tune some of the stage placements, like, we've seen some issues associated with wellbore geometry and, transversing certain formations where you have screen outs. So being able to look at those instances and just get the data over to them as quickly as possible.
Anybody in the audience have any questions? This is your chance to ask Dan whatever you want him to ask him. Go ahead.
Where's the question? Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. Dan, I have a question. You just mentioned that a lot of the work from a geologist is interpretation. And in my experience, I've seen that this is very difficult for a machine to do, to interpret a marker that's slightly off, slightly to the right, to the left. So how do we do that? That's one of my questions. The other one is, I know that at the moment we have to provide, for example, formation tops, and these are not moving currently in the well construction side. So this is a bread and butter of geology, right? You're like every meter you're updating. How are you consuming this data if this is not something that is being provided in real-time feed?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually had a long conversation about this last night. Tops are always an issue. They're very subjective. Every geologist tends to pick tops differently. So we're actually outside of Corva working with another group to figure out a way where we can standardize these on a basin-wide model and then quickly adjust these based on, 2-foot increments. It seems like there's always a pervasive problem, like every time you have a change in staff internally in a company, like top sets are completely rebuilt. And there's a ton of time. I mean, geologists spend their entire career just picking tops. That's it. So I don't know if there's really a good solution on this as of yet, but we're trying to figure it out. So
I believe if the process is not automated, if it's not an automated system, it just won't get done, right?
It's difficult to automate, so we're actually discussing with a group that's using basically acoustic pattern recognition that really works really well with any type of log response type data, and figuring out if there's a way that we want to look at half the Eagleford, that we can consistently pick that top across the entire half of the Eagleford with minimal variation. And then also if we go back, we have that static model now. So if the geologist decides that they disagree with X flooding surface or something like that, we can bulk shift those entire tops down across an entire project. Right now you can't do that. So we're trying to figure it out.
How can we...
There is a great resource named Clay Mack in the room if you want to talk to him. He can talk to you for about 2 to 3 hours on this topic.
I think, Dan, everyone wants to know, like, how do we look ahead of the bit? Why do we not have that yet?
That's the goal and that's our dream. So we haven't really got into that with Corva, but as far as forward predictive modeling, what can be done there, we've looked at these projects in the past, taking vertical log data and figuring out whether or not we can project that data out in a horizontal in between, ideally 2 data points, and then really build out like pseudo geomechanics, pseudo petrophysical curves, so we really can anticipate exactly where the reservoir is going to be and what the reservoir is doing, and then tie that back to drilling efficiencies. That's like the dream. So if we want like a lofty, pie in the sky project, we should work on that.
Well, I think we wanted that yesterday, right?
All right.
Not there yet.
Any more questions for Dan?
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so do you have tools yet, or are you thinking about tools where you can monitor multiple rigs or multiple basins at the same time, different styles of wells? And then also, if I'm an operator and looking to do this point forward or kind of take my historical data and bake that into look forward, which is better?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I couldn't hear very well.
Sure. So the first question is, do you have tools already where you can multiple basins, like multiple rig lines, different basins? Are there things for that? Are you looking to develop tools like that? And the second question is it better to sort of do this point forward in the data set, or should I go ahead and try to integrate historical data and then work forward from that?
Yeah, so some of the tools we've been building out specifically with Corva, engineers tend to get all these really, project management type tools. Geologists don't get anything. So one of the first things that we put out was our mission control app, which basically is an organizational dashboard for rigs. So we're taking all the relevant operational data that we need for a well. So whether that's, geoprogs, well logs, all of that, structure maps, and basically, tying that to a specific rig line. So these higher volume companies that are running 10 or 12 rigs, the geologist can just go in, click on the rig line, all of the data that they need to, effectively geosteer that well, work with directional and targeting is there, and, organized and within the same dashboard. And then we built out basically a checklist system. So if they're working with third-party vendors or other geologists, they can go in and they can, view what data is missing from the well or if they're deficient on anything. So these types of systems, like in my world, like our company, we run between, fluctuates, but we've been up to 110 rigs that we're managing at a time. So this can be quite challenging trying to figure out what is going on with that many rigs. So these types of tools are really what, with the real-time data streaming capability that Corva has, leveraging that and getting the geologists something that can help them organize their days. So,
any more questions from the audience? We have one. Go ahead. This will be the last question, and then we'll wind up.
Hello. My question is about integration. You mentioned that this is a challenge. So I want to know which are, if you can elaborate more on the challenges that you are having to integrate the many different systems to get where you want to go, and if Corva is working with you on that sense. And
yeah, I think the challenge, like the whole geoscience problem, was figuring out what we wanted to integrate. There's a lot, so the goal is not to rebuild a subsurface platform in its entirety, but it's taking those key components and those key data sets that, if we're looking at these geoanalytics projects where, basically we're trying to, look at, 50 wells at a time, and we want to, standardize, basically normalize on a stratigraphic surface and view every single Wolfcamp A well within a given area so that we can then get that data over to the engineer, and then they can do, compare like wells drilled in like rock to each other, so they're not comparing apples to oranges, and then really look, start to build those kind of drilling roadmaps off of. That's one thing we're working on, but it is really what components do we need. So we don't, necessarily want to recreate the entire functioning of Petrel. That's not necessary. So we always know there's going to be workflows that exist outside of what we're doing in Corva, but what can be integrated in that is going to be valuable to, a geologist that's working in a development role or operations role, but also we're providing access to the engineers so that they can view the same data that the geologist is viewing as well. Right now, I don't know, I've maybe met one or two engineers in my entire life that knows how to use Petra or Kingdom or something like that, or engineers in my entire life. There's very few. So it's about accessibility is what I think.
So any more questions? And I think we'll end the panel here. One last thing before some closing comments. So the teams have been working on a lot of stuff together. So if you go through Showcase Alley, things like Mission Control and the other apps we're talking, they're live and working today. And the last comment I have really is this journey of what I call building the software is almost, let's say, 80% complete. But the journey of our customers actually changing their workflows so that your drilling groups, your geology groups are working side by side every day in a collaborative manner, we can finish that journey without your help and your collaboration. So as we sit here today and we talk about the different ways we can change things, I think that should be our topic for the next few days or for next few months, is how do we make that transformation happen in the collaboration that occurs in your operations every single day. Thank you.
So I want to introduce up Augustine Mackey, VP of Operations for Corva.
Am I good? All right. All right, everyone, welcome. And it's a really exciting time to be alive. I mean, I'm an aerospace engineer myself, and seeing the biggest rocket ever built come back from space, land itself, and then get caught by a robotic arm, that's an incredible engineering achievement that I am very happy to be alive right now, that I was able to witness, and I never thought this would be possible when I was back in school. So it's crazy how quickly we have evolved. There's also a couple of things that have evolved in the past few years. We have self-driving cars. We have self-driving rigs, in case you haven't noticed. And then something came around 2 years ago that has really changed the way we operate. And I'm sure it has touched every individual in this room, and that is generative AI, or as ChatGPT, as many of you might know it. It writes really nice emails, but it also has allowed us to go back and rethink some of the problems that we really struggled through over the past few years. So let me talk to you about our journey with Fusion. So Fusion AI is a data ingestion and data quality tool. We started this around 2020. Okay. So we started this around 2020. It was called Parswell back in the day. Many of you might remember, many of the Corvanauts here. Maybe it might not be a very happy memory, but we were doing the best we could back in the day, and we built something really important. We built a pipeline that allowed us to receive emails, understand who that email was coming from, understand what well it belonged to, extract the document that was in there, and then furthermore, extract the information that was in that document and put it into Corva. Where we fell pretty short is the OCR technology we were using back in the day, or optical character recognition. We went straight to that, to plain text, and then built a lot of logic on top of that to make sense of what was in the document. Now, in this world of oil and gas, things are not very structured, and they change report by report. So we quickly came to realize that we had to end an endless world of logic on top of this to make it work. So we failed and failed and failed for about 2 years, but at least we narrowed down on what we could do. And that was maybe extracting like next 24 hours and last 24 hours from DDRs. And that was helpful for us because we receive a lot of them. So the amount of information we could extract was about 5% from documents, and that's even if it worked. So we realized quickly that we had to pivot and we had to do something different. So that's when we brought in Fusion Fusion API we built a really robust API that allowed our customers to connect directly to our API. They could send us the data straight into us, so we had no assumptions, we had to build no logic. We also were able to support digital file formats or structured file formats, such as JSONs or XLMs, and we worked with a lot of our partners on trying to bring this data into Corva. So this is great. We don't make no assumptions here. We bring in the data in real time. The issue is that not the entire industry is there. Not everyone has a robust API. We can't connect to every single well management system because some of them don't have APIs, and not everyone has really nice, clean format files. So this year, we've been doing a lot on LLMs, in case you haven't noticed. So this year, we went back and started thinking of the problem we were trying to solve in 2020 and said, what if we bring some LLMs into the picture? Can it, with the enhanced reasoning that they have, can it help us get rid of this really, with all this logic that we've been building in place? So we thought maybe we could get to 50% automation of the data ingestion, maybe 60%. But we quickly came to realize that building a robust pipeline with the LLMs in the correct place, we could reach 95% of the auto ingestion. So now let me walk you through how this looks and what it does in the background. So, oh, we have a problem. I need to be connected to my computer. So we like taking risks at Corva. This is one of them. So we're going to try to do a real-life experiment here. We're going to try to parse a BHA. I have Rohan in the audience. He has a printed BHA there. He's going to sign it to make sure that this is the real thing. He's going to take a picture of it, and we're going to send it into Corva. So this is the world that the BHA belongs to. And we're going to go to drill strings. So in plant BHA, I'm expecting that in the next few minutes, I'm going to receive that BHA. So now let me go back and explain what's going to happen in the background in the next couple of minutes. We're first going to go to the layer of extraction. In the past, we used to, back in the day, in 2020, we used to use OCR and then go to string of text. Now what we do is basically generate a map of this BHA, where every piece of information in this BHA has centroids with coordinates, so it's a vectorized form of this BHA, and then we can put an LLM on top of it so that everything that's next to a label, it will understand if an OD or an ID belongs to that specific component. So no more logic here. So no, like, this is the world of non-standardized reports, so now we don't have to rely on building logic for absolutely everything. The next step is extracting that information for what that well name is, and it's going to go into Corva and do a match there. And then for all our international customers here, I know we have some from Argentina in the room, we have a layer of translation. But translation is not that easy because drill bit in Argentinian Spanish is called trépano, in Mexican Spanish it's called broca, and I think in Colombian Spanish it's called mecha. And I think it's even different from Venezuela and Ecuador that are just next to each other. So this is a little crazy, but it's the way our life works. So we introduced the concept of local. Well, it's going to start geographically where you're located or who the operator is. And not only for understanding if it's drill bit, also the headache of all the units that come along with it. So it's going to understand that, and it's going to take the correct set of units. The next step, and maybe the most transformative one that we've done this year, is the context reasoning. So this is another LLM agent that we introduced. So along with this BHA, we're going to pass it information of a few different samples, different types of BHAs, or mod reports, or DDRs, depending on what the report we're parsing is. So it has context on what it looks like and what it should look like. We're also going to give it our entire SDK for units, and we're also going to give it the logic that we will be building unsuccessfully for the last 4 years. That's actually coming in handy, because it helps to solve a lot of these edge cases. So the very last step is the engineering validation. And why this is important, we're going to hear today a lot about hybrid physics and machine learning approach. So there was a race for the longest time where physics models failed because they were very slow. So they were not just not practical, they were accurate but not practical. Machine learning models were fast, but you needed an immense amount of data to have something that was meaningful. Someone put them together and they said, okay, let's put a machine learning model where the physics are very time consuming, such as evolution of saturations in reservoir management or something like that. And the approach became very handy and it's very practical these days. We're seeing the same with LLMs. If we give the LLM the information and nothing, we don't bound it, it's going to hallucinate and it's going to create some incredible BHAs that don't exist. So this is where the context reasoning, the engineering validation comes really important, because we narrow down and we say we do some engineering checks based on hard logic to make sure that everything that's going into Corva makes sense. I got a thumbs up from Rohan back there. So first we're going to go into Fusion. And Rohan, I don't know if you have passed the BHA around, but if you haven't, do so. And please stop by the booth and question us. And it's not a magic trick. We can cross out things and you'll see how it works. So Corvacon, BHA 2024, 11:06, 3 minutes ago. I've been talking too much. So you see, the email came in. It classified what rig it belongs to. It did the mapping, validation, data quality, and it's in production now. If I open the file here, there is the picture of the BHA. Now you see how this powerful can be. This can be the company man at the rig. Now let's go into Corva. let's refresh here. And there you have it. So not only do we have the BHA within Corva, every single component is here. It's fully engineered. It has all the information. We have the bit with all of its information, the motor, etc. And not only that, but now it's fully standardized as well. So you can leverage this with all the additional information and use it for your own benefit. So what we've seen today, with AI parsing now, or with Fusion AI, we're able to reach the 95 accuracy for non-standardized reports. This is huge, because in a world of where nothing is standardized, this makes our life very simple, and it's gonna enhance yours. We're gonna be able to put all your information in there. We have very diverse integrations. It doesn't have to be a BHA. If you have an API, we love APIs. So just throw all the data that you have available, and we'll be able to parse it, and you'll be able to use it. Because we live in a world where we know that data is the future, but I think in this particular industry, we haven't really applied that because we don't trust the data. I think with all the automation that we're bringing in, we're not only able to eliminate some of the human factor, but we're also able to extract a lot more information, a lot more volume. When in 2020, we were able to extract 5% of that document, if at all, now we're able to extract 100%. So we're gonna have a lot more data than we even know what to do with. So this is where I'm gonna call out to you, come to the Fusion or come talk to us so we can leverage all this data to solve the next big problem. Because now we're gonna have high quality, complete data sets that you can leverage for yourself. So let's build the future together. Let's land the starship of oil and gas, and let's see what we can do together. With that, I'll introduce Jeff Jensen, our CTO.
All right. Thanks, Augustine. Sounds like I need to talk to him a little bit more so he can learn my last name, but that's all right. All right. Yeah, it wouldn't be a tech conference without code popping up, right? So, all right. I'm going to go through, you've heard a lot of different discussion. We had a panel on AI, talked about predictive drilling, what we're doing, completions. We had a question earlier about how we're embedding LLMs, lang chains, things to that nature. And so what I'm going to go into, and I was asked and given the distinct privilege of doing a live Gen AI coding demo, which should go right if you've ever seen live demos with Google or anybody else. So with that said, let me dive in around what we're doing internally about code development and both how we're enabling our teams as well as your teams in terms of developing software more quickly, more effective software, more accurate software. And so let me dive into that. First, I saw this posted on LinkedIn. I can't take credit for it, but not all of coders will go away. So this was the best representation of AI accepting coding jobs. As you can see, there's handshakes everywhere and no hallucinations by Gen AI. And so what you hope is that we get a great efficiency gain in terms of doing software development. What you don't hope is that we introduce a bunch of bugs into the software you guys use every day. With that said, I at least wanted to open up how I believe we're moving 10x faster. I'm going to give you the opportunity to sit with me today. I think it's at 1 p.m., if that's right, Jamie. 1 or 2? 1? 1 p.m. I think I'll be back in our conference room, Voyager there. We're going to do a sips and scripts. So I plan to only have one drink during that session. But if you'd like to bring your laptop, I'm actually going to have all the code and our models, which are trained through Claude and GPT here. You'll get the chance to actually see for yourself how fast you can put together some of these apps. So if you didn't know, I'm going to use a few of these pieces in the example I'm going to show you. The first is Claude. How many people know Claude? It's a little bit less known. Okay, great. They had a big release actually yesterday, upgrading their model, so let's hope everything doesn't break for me today. Second is the icon should be recognizable in the green. That's ChatGPT. Third is you saw I had a standard code editor open, that's VS Code. A lot of developers, I'm sure in your own companies, as well as our developers, are using Cursor. Cursor is basically an effective development environment for software developers. You can take your API keys and your subscriptions to Claude, GPT, and other services, and it's really a lot more integrated besides copy pasting, which I'm going to do today. And then the last piece I want you to see is, although Ryan stressed that we have app overload and we have 200 apps, etc., one of the most powerful things that we are training internal GPTs on and our agents is our pre-canned software. We're teaching LLMs underneath the hood. Dharmesh even commented from an API layer. We're teaching them about how Corva works, how our SDKs work, how do you access and make sense of the data. And so really, I don't want to understate the importance of having our demo projects and out-of-the-boxness with that. So really quickly, when Ryan gave me this task of doing the live coding demo, I said, okay, great, let me go read the documentation. One of the biggest advantages we have is the app that I'm going to show you today normally might have taken me maybe 2 days. On a Saturday morning with a cup of coffee, I was able to do this in about 40 minutes. And part of that is a couple of things. One is reading documentation, systematically going through. You're having to kind of learn in steps of what somebody else is indicating to you. The GPT can guide you through, and especially when trained with our data and our documentation, can guide you through much more quickly. So there's a massive time efficiency, and if you're a customer saying, well, Jeff, I had a feature request 6 months ago that's not done yet, I will try and commit we'll get it done in 3 months now instead of 6. Second is, I use this a lot, and I know our engineers use it a lot. One of the advantages when you build software with us or use our software is, of course, we try and hire people with a background in drilling, completions, production, etc. And I spent some time in oil and gas about a decade ago, and of course with Corva now, but I get some interface, not a lot, but the biggest benefit that I get is I can ask it about drilling parameters, and as we're developing applications, I get inference and I get ideas about what's actually meaningful. What my customer, if you're a drilling engineer at a company and I've never sat and had lunch with you, I don't know the way you visualize our apps and the data. I have my own perspective. And so being curious and prompting the GPT, even saying, hey, I want to take the role of a drilling engineer, tell me what would be useful. You can see in this little screenshot, I get bite-sized pieces of information that I can quickly, as I'm developing software, change things around. Of course, this is a natural one, and hopefully all of your teams internally have seen the same benefit we have. You can copy-paste code and say, hey, I have a bug with this, I have an error. The ability of what it used to be 5 years ago, and not to throw Stack Overflow under the bus because they've done a great job, but your engineers probably in the past decade always went to Stack Overflow. They would say, hey, if I have an issue, go plug it into Google, you get a Stack Overflow, some engineer answers that, and you get an answer. I promise you, this is so pinpoint about even when I had an issue getting the project working, it told me exactly where to go and I had it done. It saved me a ton of time. And the last thing I think that when I see people use these tools, and I would say on average, I use GPT or Claude at least minimum 1 hour a day, if not more. I think people don't push the curiosity of what you can really ask it and value the answer and the response it gets back. And so here, you'll see I basically got the demonstration I'm about to show, but then I said, what if we showed a percentage of time ROP would pass a certain amount of the life of drilling of the well, or would it be meaningful to develop some other KPI? And I actually asked our head of product, Greg, hey, is this KPI even real? Do we have it in Corva? I asked him this last weekend. And ChatGPT actually came up with a new KPI. And so I think pushing the boundaries and being curious is extremely important. So with that said, on to the demo gods here for some live coding. So in the example, this is actually what Dev Center, an example project will give you out of the box. So you just need an account, you log in, you can spin this up. We'll do this afternoon. If you enjoy a little bit of drinking and coding, again, you come join me at 1. And so here I have essentially the whole depth for a rig, and you could argue it's a days versus depth plot, and it's not hard coded. Out of the box, we give you access to the API, can quickly fetch different periods and frequencies of the data, etc. So when I had asked it, just really quickly, said, what are the most meaningful KPIs around ROP again? All right. in some ways, I kind of have to cheat, right? It's a long conversation with the GPT, and we have a little bit of a relationship about this demo. So we did percentage of time, average ROP, and actually the one that I went with was this stability index. So it said it would show the variation of ROP over time, and then also telling me why it's important. A stable or consistent ROP indicates efficient drilling, and sure, I could dive deeper with that. And so what I actually want to do is basically get ROP quickly on this days versus depth plot that I have within Corva. And so maybe we can vision that as a column chart. So can you give me the code for a column chart to overlay the line chart for ROP? All right. So if you've never seen, or if you've just seen a post on X or something like that, this is pretty amazing because it's actually, and again, the exercise we'll go through this afternoon, it's aware of the project that I'm working on. It has context of what we're working through. And ultimately, I'm hoping it gives us a good bit of code to paste over on our line chart. So again, there's a lot of errors that could be made here. There's a lot of things from design, and what's really amazing about these LLMs, especially when you take some of the pre-documentation that we have and load that, and so again, your developers can use this as well as ours. Getting this code generated is quite loquacious here. It's now making me nervous that it's going to like bring up Tron. All right. Okay, all right. So I'm going to go ahead, snag this, copy the code. All right, so I'm cheating a little bit because I kind of know where to go in the project since I've worked here, but even if I didn't, I could probably copy paste that, and you can test me on that this afternoon. And so because I know this is actually generating the current line chart, I'm going to go copy paste our new code in here. And should get a hot refresh. Cross my fingers. All right. So pretty quickly, it actually went on a data set from Corva API, got my ROP, gave me a nice legend. I can put this in, and the code's going to basically work no matter kind of what frequency I select this at. So I have this. Decent. All right. At least my own developers clap for me, so that's all good. All right. Outside of that, the last little bit I'll show is say, well, what if I wanted? So this is Claude, by the way. I like Claude a little bit better than Chat for a couple reasons. Claude's a little bit more, I think, trained on actually doing code generation, and it also has a preview capability, which I think Chat's close to introducing as well. So what if I wanted a KPI card to show max ROP or ROP stability index in my app? Can you create this in React and show me? So if you've never used Claude, actually Claude's great as well for doing data analysis. So as an example, you can take a screenshot of a PDF, upload it into Claude, and Claude actually has a better parsing capability than ChatGPT. So if you're willing to spend an extra $20 a month on top of your ChatGPT subscription to use Claude, it's worth both. I mean, the efficiency for $40 a month is pretty good. So it's going to go through here. And again, you guys see the World Fair. Our design team is world-class. Hopefully Claude can be world-class in the KPI card. But again, I'll just show you, this is an easy way, if you're using our Dev Center, working with our team, to even quickly envision what the art of the possible should be. So as this finishes up, okay, oh, well now, okay, sorry, it's gonna tell me as well, how do I put it in my main app? It's going above and beyond. Progress never sleeps, right, Ryan? All right. So it's actually not a bad looking card. And I don't know if you've ever used Claude, but even with examples, if you go online or you like dashboards or you like a certain way this looks, I'm gonna argue our design team would actually let me put this in an app and release to at least dev, if not production. And so what I have the advantage of doing is grabbing this, and just for time's sake, I won't do this, but you can see me this afternoon and we will do this. We'll make some beautiful apps that we can put in production. And so I guess my takeaway here is we are using LLMs everywhere, AI everywhere. It's obviously the theme of our fair here from predictive drilling. You saw what we're doing internally with fusion and parsing, and our teams as well can work with your teams. Don't forget about Dev Center. Yes, we can have a lot of apps, but apps are still meaningful. The data is still meaningful in visualizing this. And so we are using this every day. It's increasing our efficiency, hopefully delivering better, more quality code to you and the product and with Corva. And it's a great collaboration space for us and our customers and partners. And so with that said, that will finish my demo. And I'm going to bring our beloved CEO up one last time for his last little showcase here. And thank you all for coming, and I'll see you in Showcase Alley. Thanks. All right, thanks guys. I appreciate everyone for coming today. This is actually just the start of a pretty interesting day. We never know what really happens, after the keynote. There's a lot of twists and turns. But anyways, we've covered a lot of ground. I think just like talking about what we're doing, it's really surface level. But I think one thing that hits home for me is like we get inundated with this information, right? And like even sometimes in my daily life, I go weeks only using my phone. And I don't even open my laptop. It's because the apps on my phone are so great, right? I mean, I feel like even I can get more functionality on some of the phone apps than I can even on the desktop apps. So it's really changed the game. That being said, I have always dreamed of, could Corva actually have an amazingly beautiful app too? Something that really changed the game too. So we hear this a lot, like we need to simplify. We have 200 apps. And it's not to say we're not building more apps, but for a lot of people out there, we need to do something different. So today, I want to introduce something that we've been working on for not a while, but it really hits home for me because what I'm interested in is like coming in and feeling an emotional bond to like what we're building. And this is the brand new Corva app. So imagine a day in the life of a future engineer. I come in, I see a real-time digital twin of what's happening. And these are my assets, and I might be still laying in bed, right? But it's beautiful. I can swipe through everything that I'm interested in. So I might be monitoring some drilling rigs. In the future, I'm so productive, I might be monitoring my frac fleets. We can even like see KPIs at a glance. So this is typically what someone would go to their computer and see. But now we're saying, hey, why can't we just do this in a beautiful interface? And so that's what we're trying to introduce. And then here's another rig. So I can actually see my drilling speed. I can see, all of these things are real time. And I can actually see we have an alert here. I can open it. I can see there's some sort of dysfunction. So I'm gonna, as I would do, I would go in and let's see more about that. So we're introducing this great new app menu, really simplifying things down to what are the core experiences and rebuilding them in a really amazing native interface. So most people use traces. Well, great, we'll have those. But we're gonna make them beautiful. Everything's gonna be native touch, swipe. So, we're really gonna introduce something that should have been done a long time ago, really something the oil and gas industry deserves. And then my last thing I wanna say or show is we have information overload, right? We've been talking about that all the time. Well, in some not too distant future, and it exists right now on my phone, is we have all this data across drilling, geo completions, and some production data now too. But what I want to know are really hard questions that are taking all this data and building something super interesting. And so we're introducing today our brand new LLM where I can ask Corva anything. What is the fastest lateral section bit in Glasscock County with lowest MPT? Even I can misspell that, but I'm actually going to change this to non-productive time. Oops. Let me, fucked up the nip, sorry. We could have went through and that failed, but actually I've done that same question before, and MPT, which was misspelled, actual work. So that is the beauty of lateral section bit in Glasscock county with lowest non-productive time. Boom. So what this is going to do is it's going to go off and actually figure out what's the fastest level. Let's try that again. What's the fastest lateral section bit in Glasscock County with lowest non-productive time? All right, boom. So, you know, there are some issues with LLMs, and we're going to have to work through that. But look, this is actually a really complicated question that I've asked here, and we're not providing anything to the system besides the data. So the LLM is actually trying to figure out what are the steps I need to take, what's the data, and then how do I mix it together. So it says based on the data, the Ultera CF516 bit demonstrates superior performance in the lateral sections with the highest ROP while maintaining zero MPT. And then the NOV and the Schlumberger bit shows moderate, whatever. So you can see, and I'm actually getting this data back. And what we can also do is graph this in so many ways, charts. We can actually pull even apps in here, and we can even ask it to generate dashboards for me. And then in the future, we will do so much more. But this is just the beginning of what is Corva and what does Corva mean to you. So I hope you enjoy the day. It's going to be a great day, so enjoy yourself. Thank you.